Welcome to the Speak Pact podcast, where high-performing speakers and the producers who hire them merge to give you the insider secrets to the lucrative speaking industry. Antoniette Roze, your podcast host and celebrated speaker agent, unveils insider success strategies. Discover a nexus of thought leaders and bookers, maximizing your potential in each and every episode. Your ticket to ultimate speaking success begins right here. Catch the transformative insights waiting for you on the Speak Pact podcast, hosted by the industry powerhouse herself, Antoniette Roze.
I am bringing you a treat today. I have Mike Taubleb, hope I said that right, Mike Taubleb, in the studio, and he owns a speakers bureau. As you all know, I'm a speaker agent. So we're going to talk a little bit about the differences between the speaker services that are out there and what value they can bring you. Everyone is different. So we're going to really dive into some of those different key aspects and more. Mike is a 20-year veteran in the industry. He's the owner of Promenade Speakers Bureau, a New York-based talent broker for, again, 20 plus years. And he works with professional speakers, trainers, MCs, facilitators, entertainment, corporate trainers, associations, all the good things. So welcome to the stage, Mike. So glad to have you.
Yeah, same. Thanks for inviting me, Antonia.
Yeah, so let's talk about this. So first of all, what got you into the speaking industry and more succinctly, becoming an owner of your own bureau?
Yeah, it was not by design. I was working in the ad agency world and new business development and as an account manager. And the owner of my agency asked me to help her get some training gigs where she'd come in and talk about direct marketing for about a day or two, get paid for it. But for her, it was the Trojan horse to get her in front of a client who would then engage her for more of these ongoing ad agency kinds of services. And that opened my eyes to this whole other universe of people who make a living talking about their expertise or helping people develop their own expertise or tell stories or whatever it is that they do in the world. And it was eye-opening to see how many people were doing this, not all famous, but making a decent living at it. And I was at a point in my career where I guess I didn't see myself working in the ad business per se for another 10 years. And I just decided to start going out on my own. I probably should have worked for a bureau or an agency for a couple of years. That probably would have helped my learning curve, but I just went out there and started the business. And it has always been a broker. There are a lot of organizations that you'll find are agencies or managers of talent. And there's a great need for that and a great value to them. It fit in with the way I wanted to pursue things. And even as an owner, there are things to consider about whether you want to engage other people, for instance, to help you manage the business, and whether you want to have certain obligations to certain people to book them a certain amount of times a year. And I guess I had decided that I was going down a different path.
Well, you got something right based on the longevity of the length of time you've been in this career. Whether the learning curve could have been easier or not, sometimes I find just getting out there and doing it is the best education. And so for you to have that kind of longevity means that you got it. You got it. You struck a chord with people. You're making a difference for their careers. So let's talk a little bit about that. So as professionals in the speaking space, we know what we bring to the table, but let's say as an emerging speaker, as somebody who has accomplished a certain level of profession in their life and now they're really wanting to get their voice out there, which way do they go? Do they get an advisor? Do they get a manager? Do they hire a bureau or many bureaus? Do they get an agent? What's the difference between a broker and an agent? All of those different things. Let's dive into that. And first and foremost, what attracted you to becoming a broker kind of bureau? And I know you do some advisory work as well, versus maybe a manager or an agent.
Sure. I it was just the path that I was taking initially. And after a few years, of course, I started to run into a lot of people who are agents or managers of maybe just one speaker or a group of them, or even the biggest names in the world, like a Washington Speakers Bureau or leading authorities who work with ex-presidents and ex-cabinet members and Bono and everyone else that you can imagine like that. That takes a certain sort of infrastructure. It takes experience, which at the time I did not have, and credibility with a speaker who will say, hey, who have you already booked 10 times and which organizations have you hired? So perhaps there was a certain inertia that had formed that path. But for an emerging speaker, I don't have one answer as to who you should start with, because it's going to depend on a lot of things, how much you want to invest in your business, and how many bookings you want to get, and maybe you know some agencies already and you've been recommended to them by other people you know who speak, and that's a very good way to go, because this is a real personal kind of business. It's highly fragmented. There's some large agencies that are established and are great to be with, and then there's just many dozens, if not hundreds, of other managers and agents, all operating in somewhat different kinds of models. And a broker is good, I think, better when you're already fairly well established. And maybe you look at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. Each of them have their own client bases, their own specialties, and each of them can get you incremental business. And yet you're not dependent on any one of them. And you also come to understand that they are not going to promote you on an ongoing basis. A broker, and really one of the essential differences between a broker and an agent is as a broker myself, I am trying to get business for my bureau. And so my client is the organization that pays my bills, that is a company or an association or a professional society that gives me, let's say, $10,000, a budget, let's say, of that, and then pays me once I book somebody. My client is not the speaker. I have to have great relationships with a ton of different speakers, and I think I have built those over the years, and they have to be treated fairly, and they have to be able to make a profit from what they're doing and want to keep working with me. It's to my advantage too, and ethically. However, it's a different kind of agenda. So there may be a speaker I pitch like once a month. They're just perfect for so many different people, and maybe their fee range is great, or they're a hot topic, or people just keep asking me for them. And then maybe people I almost never pitch for no reason. Whereas an agent, maybe who has 10 people, and I'm all day long I'm dealing with agents. Probably a third of the speakers that I book are co-brokered with other agents or managers. We are, you could say, competitors on a certain level, but more likely partners. I'm often asked for people by name that I just know are managed, or I go to them for ideas, or maybe they send me a promotion and I say, oh, what a great idea, perfect timing. Or I keep them on a database, their talent on a database, and something clicks and I contact them. Those people have 10 speakers, let's say. They're out there marketing the heck out of them. They're building relationships with brokers like me, as well as companies and other associations and everyone else who's a potential buyer. They will actively guide your career. They're going to help you with, or should help you with, almost every aspect, from presentation skills to marketing to how you position yourself in the speaking marketplace, or perhaps developing sort of complementary kinds of services besides speaking. Whereas a broker, you're already a formed entity when you come to me, and I'm just out there trying to close a deal and get you booked for a particular engagement. So that's, in a nutshell, what's different. I would say it's always good to get advice, because the business of speaking is complicated, probably gotten more complicated over the years and more competitive, frankly, over the last 10 years. there are just simply more people out there. The advent of the internet and social media and all the different platforms that people can build an identity lends itself to more people getting out there. There's more demand, yes, but it's good for someone who can probably help you focus and make you as appealing as possible. And for that, there are either people who are advisors, or you just are simply aligning yourself with an agent who is in a position to do it. I can do it in a more surface sort of way, frankly. I might, give somebody an hour or 2 hours. I'm paid for those services, but it's not going to be an ongoing consultant advisory unless somebody is engaging me all those times. And I've done that primarily because people just keep asking for it. Even when I say, you should link up with an agent or a manager to more actively manage your career. You should be prepared to invest in your career, whether that's building a really world-class demo reel, a great website, and also building, besides your presentation skills, these relationships with agents and managers. And they may ask you for certain things, too, that I'm just not privy to. If you want to get paid $10,000, $15,000 a speech and everyone else is out there and you don't have a good video, all right, don't spend the $10,000 for a video producer, but you kissed off $100,000 in bookings over a year or two. So that's a decision you have to make.
Okay, you've said
that's how I'd answer it.
You said a lot there. That was golden, and I fully agree with. But you also said it in a way that I hadn't heard it before, so I really appreciate that. But first of all, I'm gonna kind of go from where you were and I'll go back. I absolutely agree with you regarding no matter who you hire, whether it's a combination of brokers, managers, agents, non-exclusive agent, whatever you do, you still can't just sit back and think it's all going to come. It's all going to happen, right? There's things that you need to do. And one of those things is making sure you have updated headshots, current good video of the different talks that you're doing that's fresh and recent, right? There's speaker reels, demo reels, which is different than the sizzle reels. Like there's all of these different things that you can be doing. And it's not one and done. You probably need to get it done every 6 months to a year, definitely every 2 years. But I so often see speakers who have a demo reel from 4 or 5 years ago, right? And a lot has changed. The mood has changed. The subject matter has changed. Just the look and feel of life has changed, and you need to be relevant in there with that. And I know it's an investment. You got to be willing to make that investment. But you said it very well. Is trading $10,000 worth the potential of $100,000, right? So how devoted are you to your craft and to your profession in this area? To me, speaking, and I would love to hear if this is, if you feel the same way, speaking is the greatest of all worlds. Lifestyle, income potential, adventure, interest, like staying interested in what you're doing, prestige as far as getting recognized for what you bring to the table. To me, it's just that pinnacle type of career. And that's why there's so much complication and so much competition, as you put.
Right. It's a good way of putting it, competition and complexity and complication. These were all trends that were inevitable and making their way through. They become more obvious as the event business is, let's say, gone back to the way it was pre-pandemic, but it's not the same as it was before the pre-pandemic. But I would say expectations are higher from buyers, and we can go into that later. And one thing also, videos are important because frankly, the buyers are all over the place. It could be someone just gathering information who's never done this before, and they're looking at 30 different pitches, and frankly, their attention span is short, and maybe they don't even know what to look for, so they just look at the video for 30 seconds, and they're going to make a snap judgment on that. You like to think they look at the entirety of everything, but often they don't. It's just human nature. Other people who are much more savvy are going to look through the whole video, and they're going to look at it from the point of view of your style, not going too deep into the content, understanding that you have 5 different talks and only one of them is on this sample video. Yeah, but a lot of times you have to sort of position to the lowest common denominator in terms of your buyer and how they are looking at your materials. And it's worth that investment. And it's also worth that investment in getting an expert and looking at your write-ups. Do your session descriptions sound dated? Are you making a lot of COVID references? Well, we're not in that anymore. Look, a lot of people sneezing, coughing. Yes, there's the wave of this year, and there'll be one 3 years from now. But people don't want to be immersed in that anymore. And I can't give you a name for the era that we're in, but what you talk about and what's in writing when people look at your site has to sort of telegraph that you are in the here and now and the future. And that's what I would say in that regard. And your bio too. Your bio should be talking about what you're doing in this year. If you have a new book, or let's say your book came out 2 years ago, don't say, I shouldn't read in your bio, it's soon to be published in 2023. Okay, that means you haven't updated your bio for 2 years.
Yes.
Things like that an agent will probably pick out for you and update.
Yeah, I don't underestimate that person who has their finger on the pulse of the industry, who can keep you from making costly mistakes or just stalling or losing out on that one engagement, right? Just that one piece of information can get you the edge that you need to beat out, right, the other 5, 10, 15 speakers vying for that particular keynote spot or corporate training spot, whatever that might be. I really love, Mike, that you brought up competitors versus collaborators. I love that we're working together. I know that, as you know, I'm co-founder, co-producer of Booking Agents Connect, and you are part of that. A bunch of us would be, right, competitors, actually come together to share ideas, collaborate, keep each other on top of what's going on, right, in the industry. And this is a definite changing industry. There are significant changes that did happen post-lockdown, but we're not ever going to go back to how it was. And for speakers and the event industry as a whole, I think, and corporations and the workforce as a whole, there were some major shifts that came out of that time. I think many of those shifts were really positive for speakers, at least the speakers who are going to adapt. What are your insights on that?
It's a really interesting point. I hope I've just changed positions a little bit. Changes. And if you don't mind, I guess I could give you my opinion about the changes coming out of the pandemic and that era, and maybe even what was happening a year before that. A lot of them have been positive. Look, we should have all been upgrading our virtual and online skills, but this made it a necessity. And we should have been investing in a studio in our homes or elsewhere. We didn't have to call out, because that's become understood that that clients expect that. You may be booked for an in-person event, and then something happens, and they've got to revert to virtual. So you've got to have those skills available and the infrastructure set up for it. Diversity, yeah. Heck, I've been trying to get rid of some old files at home, and I'm looking through these contracts from 15 years ago, and it's like, holy cow, my God, and I'm looking who's been booked and even who they say they've booked in previous years. And yeah, it's all these 60-year-old white guys. And I'm one of them, right? But there's a place for everyone. But I think there was a movement towards that a year or two before the pandemic, but it wasn't really coming into fruition until sometime after that in terms of how people were actually booking. They may have asked for it, but then at the end, maybe that decision didn't get made at a point where they had to actually choose somebody. That's changed dramatically. That means everyone's got to up their game. It's not. I don't infer anything nefarious. Sometimes it's just momentum, or people went with who they know or who they saw at another event, or just who's been out there longer. Everyone has to do something, I would say, more to make themselves distinctive. Another change that's come out of it is that people don't necessarily want the straight 45-minute to 60-minute talk. They want the interactivity to be much more visceral, and that's especially in online, but also in person, and that should come through in your videos, frankly, and probably up front. I have been told explicitly by some big convention organizers, look, we're cannibalizing our own events, right? And so I need to do something that makes this a real experience, that compels members or attendees to want to come back, because some of these people are cutting back on the amount of shows they're doing in the industry. So this has got to be something more than just a talk. It's got to be something where they're connecting with other people, or where they feel energized and not in a surface sort of way, or where they've just got an experience that they couldn't get elsewhere by, let's say, looking at YouTube videos. So that's a big change. I've been asked for, and this is sort of a nebulous phrase, but just, hey, Mike, just get me something different. And it's kind of, you know it when you see it, frankly, as a person who deals with talent, and you do too, I'm sure, Antoniette. Not everyone has to be that way, but like I've got a guy who's connected with me who's the party scientist. His name is Jacques Martinet. And he finds a way to add sort of a social partying aspect to an event, either as an MC. He does give talks about play and joy, but he's doing something different that's going to really enhance an entire event versus just giving a talk. There are other people who are similarly in this sort of building connectedness kind of way, and sometimes they just have a unique talent that's coming through. I went to an event on AI. You think, oh, all tech, boring. No, I met this guy who has had a session on fun. And he's a musical composer. He's a showrunner. He writes shows for broadcast and produces other musical artists. But he had enough of a tie-in to AI to show how it helps him create music. And he created a viral song, I guess you could say, using AI. And I think it was the most shared AI-generated song. But it was fun. There were people getting up right from the beginning. They were dancing. He's playing music, but it wasn't contrived. They were not plants in the audience. You could see that this person just had it. He understood it. He was not talking about it in a scientific way, and it was very. It was obvious without being telegraphed how he was getting across what fun is, and he's putting a completely different patina on AI, which everyone's talking about productivity and financial values, and we're going to lose jobs and all this. And he's flipping it and saying, this is how it's going to make your life better as the average person. In fact, he was inviting people to, which tab to push so that I can add this sort of dimension to the song or that dimension. That's the kind of thing that I'm looking for increasingly. Other brokers probably are to a certain extent as well.
I have seen that. I love that you brought that up, Mike, because I have definitely seen a shift towards looking for somebody who can create an experience versus maybe a celebrity name, right? Or a celebrity status. And celebrities, they're going to be in demand. But I think that organizations are looking beyond the celebrity now and looking for the person who can really bring a memorable experience. We were all locked up, right? We crave we were locked up and sitting and listening to things. And now we really do want to get back in there. And I don't think that that's going away anytime soon. We had enough time without being able to have experiences together to reappreciate it all over again. And that's going to reverberate, I think, for a really long time. And event producers and corporate executives, they recognize that. If they can create a memorable experience through the talent that they bring in, then they can create transformation and some real change. So thank you for bringing that element to the table. That's very important.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. And, there are some major event producers, let's say conference companies, they're getting bought up by private equity and venture capital firms. So this is a huge business. It is not a niche business, but with that comes higher expectations. When you're part of this billion-dollar Blackstone-owned business, they're looking to, all the financial metrics are coming in there, and so the event organizer really has to start looking at who they hire in a much more objective, methodical sort of way. And so they are evaluating talent probably more rigorously than they used to. Look, you talk about celebrities. Yeah, that's a bugaboo of mine. I'm often asked for them, and sometimes it seems like it's a good fit. They have the budget, great. Other times there's some other reason, they're into some sports star because the execs want to pal around with the person, during the VIP sessions or at lunch. Hey, wonderful, but how relevant is it going to be to everyone else there? They're going to get the same talk that's been given for the last 10 years because they've been out of sports for 15 or 20 years. So this is what they talk about, that Super Bowl victory and blah, blah, blah. Some sports guys and women are good, for sure. I'm just giving you that as an example. If I have a budget of $75,000, I'm going to be looking for 3 people at 25, or 1 at 30 and 1 at 35, rather than the biggest name celebrity I can get for 75. Mm-hmm. I think it's good with risk management. I just think it's better for the overall event outcome for something like that.
That was another really fabulous point. Just that whole risk management piece, right? So the average speaker booker or the organizer is not concerned with saving money on the budget. They're concerned with creating the biggest bang for that budget so that they're a hero and they have job security and they're just fabulous because they brought in the right mix of people to create the experience that's going to be a lasting memory and check off some check marks that organization was wanting to happen for that $75,000 budget of putting the people on that stage. So really great point. And that kind of brings me to, how do you decide, even though your client is not the actual speaker, but speakers I'm sure approach you or you go and find them for your clients who are these organizers, what makes you decide yes or no you're going to work with either an organization, and yes or no you are going to consider this speaker to be somebody that you pitch?
Great questions, especially the first one, because, how do I pick speakers? That's the core of my existence, and I'm constantly thinking about how to evaluate talent. I'm going to answer that first because it's the easiest one. I'm looking at the professionalism of their materials. Is it obvious what they speak about? Some people are all over the place, or I can't find their speaking session descriptions, or they just have a title that doesn't really tell me too much about what they talk about. My clients want to see takeaways, bullet-pointed takeaways, learning outcomes. Not all of them, but a lot of them. A lot of clients want that. It should be spelled out. I understand that you're not going to go off that list, with blinders on, but someone's got to be able to read this and say, this is what this person's going to talk about. I am looking at trying to, I've been doing this a while, so I may see what they've been doing, where they've been booked elsewhere. So maybe they're overexposed in a certain industry. I may not pitch them for that reason. Or maybe I will pitch them for that reason because that's just who everybody in the industry wants to see or profession wants to see. What's been the experience of dealing with them and the people that support them? Whether it's their managers, their just the person in their office that assists them, or some other entity. If I can't get information, when I need it, and sometimes I've got 2 weeks to gather information. Sometimes I need it in a day. That responsiveness matters to me, and that I get what I'm looking for, and I'm not asking usually for very complicated kinds of things. A lot of it is going to be on their website, and if it's there, I'm not even going to ask for it. If your bio and your session descriptions are there, I won't even ask for them if it's clear what they are or your video. But maybe I want to know what's new with you and what's coming up next. That's the kind of information it's helpful to have, but your agent or manager is more likely going to be able to highlight that for me and tell me what it is that I should be focusing in, and frankly, how to sell you. An agent knows more about you than I do. That is one of their huge strengths. Yes, they have an agenda to get out there and sell you, but I just can't know everything about 3,000 speakers. It's impossible. There's some people I know a huge amount about and some I know a medium amount about. So yeah, I need to get that kind of information. As far as, is someone been good on site? Great. I'll keep going to them. But if they've been a pain in the neck on site and they say no to sort of arbitrary asks from a client that aren't really contractual, or they, show up late or just other kinds of silly kinds of stuff, I'm very unlikely to approach them again. And I'm no different than anyone else, because just like there are I won't say a million, but there's a lot of brokers and agents out there. There's also a lot of speakers in almost every endeavor. I haven't had bad experiences with celebrities, quite honestly, because they've been very well supported. The expectations have been equal on both sides. I've booked the Martha Stewarts and the Damon Johns of the world, and they've been fantastic, even under some very trying circumstances. So I guess I have a high expectation for talent, both in the pitching process and in the booking process, and usually it's met. Organizers, look, I can't say there's kinds of organizations I'm not going to book for, or maybe I just haven't encountered them. But it's more the situation. I'm going to ask the most important question that anybody can ask, that must strike fear into a lot of organizers when it's asked: what's your budget? What's your budget? How much can you spend? If they can't answer that, how am I going to start doing outreach to people and spending a lot of time putting together a proposal I'm not compensated for, thinking that, oh, all right, wonder what's going to happen once I put this proposal in, spending all this time from the speakers who are now going to be calling me and asking me what's happening. You'd be surprised. That's something that is the biggest issue of all. If a client cannot tell you a budget or who they've hired in the past, which would give me a pretty good idea of what they spend, I don't spend any more time on it. That more than everything else put together. And also, yes, if I've put together a proposal, and I do take a lot of pride in what I do and what I put together, I don't expect to get a booking out of it, because my closing rate is probably 1 in 4 or something. But I do expect to find out what's going on. Hey, you booked someone else. Okay, great. Thank you. Now I can release all the holds I have on my calendar. Now I know, or did I get close? Next time, maybe I'll pitch some of the same people. If I'm ghosted, I'm probably not going to deal with that client again. Believe it or not. I love to get business, but the most important thing I have in this business, besides trust and relationships, is my time. Mm-hmm. If someone's wasted my time, I'm not going to work with them again, probably, unless there was some technical reason for why I never heard back, despite me contacting them 6 times. So yeah, hopefully that answers that.
Okay, it does so well. I've just had this experience over the years. The divas are generally not the seasoned speakers. There's some, right? But the divas are those ones who feel like they should be that, celebrity speaker, but they're not there yet. And right. They're the ones that are making the unreasonable demands, or get just really difficult to work with, and they're stressing right. out the organizer, and so then that's stressing out us. Do you find that, or is that just something?
Yes, 100,000%. I'm going to give you an example without naming the person. Excuse me. I was approached by someone who's actually fairly decently established as a business speaker. I'll leave it at that. Not a household name, but well known in my business. He gave me, and I've known about him for probably 7, 8, 9 years. Maybe I pitched him a few times to clients, didn't get him booked. And then about a year ago, I get this sustainability rider. And it's all the different ways that a conference has to be sustainable. Forget about what you think about climate change and all the other stuff and ESG and so forth. But it was multiple pages. These were requirements that would basically make the event planner or producer engage other people to make them happen. It would make them institute requirements on their venue or other things that would cost more money than they would be spending on the speaker. And I almost thought, did I really read this? Even if they were optional, I would never put that in front of a client. Never. They would never work with me again. Why should I jeopardize a whole relationship that I've invested so much in by this ridiculous writer that wasn't even, we've all seen celebrity writers, but usually most of the stuff is pretty tame and routine and not applicable and won't add a cost. So that's an example. You can have your ethics and your beliefs, but try not to overlay those or apply those to the producer or the planner or the client. They run their business the way they want to run their business, and they're not going to change it to fit in with your values, frankly. I'm just being blunt. This was almost an over-the-top kind of thing. I showed it to some agents at a gathering, and they said, I've never seen something like this, Mike. My goodness.
That's a good one.
Okay,
yeah,
so that there's those kinds of exceptions, but maybe overseas that's the kind of thing that is engaged with, but in the U.S., not really.
That's definitely an overuse of a writer, right? If you've got your views, great. I think there's other ways you can go about that. To me, a writer is more about, do you want to have a handheld mic or do you want to have a lapel mic? Do you want a podium? Do you not want a podium? All those kinds of things. Because the organizers want to know that. That makes their life easier. But to create something that makes an organizer's life more complex than it already is, maybe some people will work with that, but I would definitely shy away from that.
Yeah. Again, that's a rarity, but it stood out. And as you said, it's not the celebrities that have these troublesome writers. It's every once in a while the person who's not that and is somehow. Even with celebrities, frankly, there's a lot of celebrities out there. And if a celebrity is too difficult to deal with, the word gets around too.
At this point, I know that there's a good number of people who want to know, how do they find you? How do they reach out to you? Whether they're an organizer or they have an organization who's looking for speakers on a pretty regular basis, or maybe they're a speaker that wants to get on your radar. What are the best ways to find you?
Okay. If you're an organizer or what I call a client, somebody who's putting together a conference and you have a budget, for sure, because I never, ever pitch speakers for free or for exposure, and nor do any other bureaus or agents, not even for nonprofits. Sorry, maybe you have a connection with them personally, and then you can pursue that. But as an agent, as an agency or a bureau, I have to make a profit on every booking. From that point, just send me an email. Let me know what you're looking for. Maybe you have someone you want to book that you saw on my site, or we already have somewhat of a relationship, and you'd like me to look among a few people that are on my site, or you just have an idea of what the event is and what kind of focus you want to have on it content-wise and budget, and maybe a few other details, and I can put together a proposal. If I don't think I have enough information, I'll send you an email, and we go from there. I don't have any form for you to fill out. Some places do. And let me know when you need to know. I could put together a recommendation in a day if I have to. I do a much better job when I have 5 to 10 days to do that, because I just really think about it for a while. Just like any other creative person, sometimes ideas come to you when you're not just sitting in front of a computer or through a database. There's a lot of people on my website. There are a lot of others who are not there, but I know about them. And once I can really start to ponder it a bit, I can come up with a better idea. As far as speakers and how to contact me, here's what I'm going to say up front. Please never cold call me. Never. Ever. That ended, and I built my business on cold calling, probably the first 5, 6, 7 years. I can't run my business, and I suspect most of the bureaus and agencies can't either if they're taking calls out of the blue. Yeah. I could be in the middle of something like this, or maybe even an event that I booked somebody for, because I tend to sit in on all my virtual events. And then I'm getting this call, and I'm trying to wonder who's what. It doesn't work. The best thing is to send an email, explain not who you are and why you're so great, but what you can do for someone like me or my clients, or for someone like Antoniette, who has more of an agent perspective. That doesn't come across a lot. It's great when it does. There are some speakers that are just wonderful. They talk about the trends in the market and they say, here's something that you can use. Now, these are some people I already work with, but very often I'll just get somebody saying, it's like a long stream of consciousness. Here's a bio. Here's my pricing. I'd love to work with you. Great. How do you stand out from everything else that I'm getting like that all the time? It's not that I'm, hot potatoes. It's just that I only have a certain amount of bandwidth. And if I'm getting 5 or 6, 7 or 8 of these, boilerplate kinds of emails, it doesn't stand out. Pay someone to do it, either an agent, because when I get a pitch from an agent, it's inevitably much, much better than the ones that I'm getting from the speaker. And I'm not just saying that to play up to Antoniette. It really is true, because I get a lot of those too, because they just know how to make it so that this is how I'm going to be able to make money from the speaker. Or why the speaker is so hot in the market and why others are hiring them and why they should be on your radar. That's got to make it what's in it for me. That was a long way of saying don't call me, bro, please. Another way is every bureau has a different way they like to be approached. I would say most of them would like to get an email with an explanation or a pitch as to why we should be working together. If you're approaching me as a broker, from that point of view, if you're looking for an agent, it's a different kind of pitch because you want a closer, more ongoing kind of relationship. Nevertheless, on my site, after years and years of banging my head against the wall, I have written out a really extensive, thorough session, but description of how I like to be approached, the kind of information I like, the things that help somebody stand out. A short version of that and a long version of that. You should look at that. And you should look on every different entity's site that you're approaching because they'll very often spell out how they like to hear from talent. When I get a generic kind of thing that doesn't even have my name on it, and it's obvious this is the same thing that's sent to 50 other agencies that they got from a mailing list broker, really doesn't work.
Oh,
it's not worth it. It's worth it to take that effort to make each touch personalized and customized to the extent that's possible. When someone says, please share this with all your agents, well, I'm a one-person shop. If you went on my site, that would be patently obvious. Find that out. If you approach leading authorities or Washington Speakers Bureau, they've been doing this a long time, top of the industry, and they've got a pretty prescribed way that they like to hear from people. You shouldn't blow your first chance by just sending them a generic, come on.
I was looking through it's the Promenade Speaker Bureau's site, Promenade Speaker Bureau, and I was pretty impressed. I'm like, good on you. Like you lay it out. There is no question about who should approach you and how they should do it.
Yeah.
And I really, I felt like you did a great job of that. And it's, if you want to learn from that as an emerging voice, as an emerging speaker, our dear audience, take a look at his site and get to know it. As Mike said, not every bureau, not every agency, not every agent is going to want to be approached the same. But I think that there's some core kind of through line rules.
Yeah, I would say so. And have a long-term perspective. Maybe you just caught somebody on a bad day and they were swamped with other things. Or you were in an area that wasn't of interest to them that day or week or month or 6-month period. Be consistent about it. Don't send me an email every week. Don't put me on an email, a weekly email list either, because that I'm going to just delete and unsubscribe immediately or block, especially if I didn't ask to be on it. I'm being fairly blunt just because, again, managing my time, and even if you're an agency of 3 or 4 people, they still have the same perspective. They're trying to do as much as they can in 8 or 9 hours, and they don't want to just spend all that time responding to emails or being distracted by them. Just take the time to see what people are asking for and provide it for them, and have a tracker maybe on how you're getting in touch with people. Here's another thing that I've found out. I use LinkedIn a lot, and I think I'm pretty good at reaching out to prospective customers. I put together a customized invitation note for every single touch that I have. I don't just hit that connect button. I often get those kinds of generic connection requests from talent. Now I've got to do all the work. Why should I add you to my network so that you can what? So you can start pitching all the people in my network, or you can just start pitching me without any sort of initial relationship? I'm not going to do that. It seems easy to do. Again, better to take the time to figure out what somebody wants to hear from you and how they'd like to hear from you, and then approach it that way.
Love it. So what is a fair cadence? So you received an email. The timing wasn't quite right. Maybe you responded to them. Maybe you got busy and didn't respond to them. Like, what would be an acceptable sort of length of time for them to check back in with you?
If they're simply trying to get on my radar, I'd say maybe send something once a quarter at most. If I've already acknowledged, hey, I got this, thanks, I'll keep you on my list, or, some other at least acknowledgement, or I've asked you to do certain kind of thing like join eSpeakers, or, send me, I've sent you my how to contact us email with the kinds of things we like to hear from speakers or talent, then let that go. I wouldn't just keep saying, hey, did you get my email? Did you get my email? Did you get my email? It's not like we're in the middle of a pitch and you need to know because maybe you have a date coming up from another client and you need to know if September 20th was if you won. No, don't call up and say, hey, did you get my email? Oh my gosh, please don't. Okay. I really do read just about every email I get, unless it's spam. And I really try hard to acknowledge them, even in a short sort of way, because that's the way I want to be treated too. But beyond that, just, sometimes it's timing. Maybe someone hits me just when I'm looking for somebody, just sort of similar to them. And that happens a lot. Yeah. And it happens with other brokers and agents too. So have your outreach being methodical and tracked, and don't think that because you don't hear from someone for a year or even a year and a half that it's never going to happen. Maybe it's just not, the timing isn't right. But if I see that you're a person that's been out there and this isn't just some one-shot mass mailing, I'd take you more seriously too.
Mm-hmm. Being findable, right? If you can Google that person and they're all over the place, mm-hmm. That makes a big difference than somebody who you really got to hunt to try to find some information on. We don't have time for the words. It's not going to happen, right?
Findable is really important. I should be able to find you on LinkedIn, and you should have a website, either your own or your agent's website, so that I could just look at it when I can.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're headed to my signature question. I have one more question before that, though, because you said very quickly mentioned e-speakers. Do you have a short list of organizations that you feel like if you are an emerging speaker and you are serious about having speaking a major part of your overall business model, you must be part of?
It's a good question. I'd say e-speakers is the given, assuming that you're already established. And when I say established, you've given several dozen speeches, you've been paid for them. You have a video. You have a bit of a write-up about who you are and who you talk about. Those are the basics that they have. That this is a service that I can subscribe to and virtually any other organizations can subscribe to. And then once you update your profile, it's automatically updated on my site. I don't have to do anything. It saves you a huge amount of time too. And I'm not getting anything here by pitching these speakers. It's just a tool. It helps me run my business. I very often, if I'm putting 6 speakers in a proposal, probably 2 of them are people I found on eSpeakers. It's that valuable. I'm constantly booking talent that resides there. It's just useful. Now, are there other platforms like that? I believe there are. I'm just not so privy to them. There are speakers that even have sort of their own little bureau listings of talent, the people they're just friendly with in the industry. Look into that. I believe there's something called Innovation Women Network, which is for women, talking about business topics typically. And I think you have to pay a little bit, maybe a monthly subscription, but it's this person not only lists you, but also posts organizers who have events as well. So, there's an opportunity for you. those are the places that I would say to go, and you should be findable on the web through SEO, and that's again something where either you're hiring someone or an advisor is making sure that your site is findable. When I'm looking for an AI speaker on healthcare, that I could find you. Sometimes I don't know who's out there in a certain area, and I do the same sort of Google search that every person does too.
Yeah, so important. It's to me, it's just as important, if not more so, than the assets themselves. Get findable, and then wow the person who found you through the assets. But if you're not findable, you're the best kept secret. Doesn't matter how fancy your demo really is and your website is. If you're not findable, none of that matters.
I'll tell you, people. Not everyone uses LinkedIn, just like not everyone's on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook. I don't use it personally, and I don't use it professionally for privacy reasons, and because I waste enough time on other social media, frankly. But a lot of other people do. So maybe it's something you look into there, or Instagram. Again, I don't use it, but other people do. Get an advisor who can tell you how to devote your efforts or focus your efforts and investment. And it's a time investment as well as developing content. I love it. I always am finding out about talent when I read posts on LinkedIn. People have just written something interesting that somehow the algorithm feeds to me, and I say, oh, maybe I could use that person for something. People who hire talent, at companies and trade associations, it's the same thing. They're just coming across talent in all different kinds of ways, including what they've read online and in social media platforms.
Yeah, fabulous insights, Mike. I almost feel guilty asking you my signature question because you've already given us such actionable steps to take if we're serious, right? You should have pages of notes by the end of this interview, because there are real, tangible things you can do as an emerging voice to really get those first several dozen paid engagements, like Mike said, is what establishes you in the industry. Make sure all of your assets are in place and current and relevant, not dated, all of that stuff. So such good insights. Thank you for sharing all that you have. So as we close out, I would love for you to leave our audience. Okay, so my own backstory is that I love emerging voices. I want your voice out there so that the people looking for your solution has access to the information that you have. And so this podcast is built around that premise. Let's make a pact to impact wherever we are in our space. Let's make the best of it, right? Get our voices out there in the biggest, broadest ways that we can. So knowing that the average listener of Speak Pact is maybe not a celebrity speaker quite yet, right? They are emerging, they're well accomplished and getting their voices out there now in the speaking arena. What is something, the very first thing that the piece of advice you would give to an emerging speaker like this? Do this and you will move the needle.
I would say do as much as you can to build your thought leadership on platforms that buyers are on, like LinkedIn. Maybe there's some others. Maybe there's some trades. For me, BizMash is a big trade industry, event and meetings trade industry. And if I read something there, then maybe I pay attention to that person one way or the other. Be a presence in those niche kinds of areas, or the general business ones like LinkedIn and probably a few others that I haven't mentioned. Those to me are a given. And then think about what you could offer outside of speaking as what's called a value add. Can you do coaching? Could you offer somebody, hey, I'll do two free coaching sessions on site for some of your attendees. I'll do a breakout session the same day as I do a keynote. I'll do a podcast beforehand to promote the event, to help promote the event. Or I'll do a follow-up webinar 2 months later to go deeper or to help people to sustain whatever learning happened at the event that you hired me at. Think about those kinds of value adds. Not everybody can have a book. Not everybody wants a book. But there are all kinds of ways that you can make yourself different than the typical person who's just coming in and doing a solo keynote.
Perfect. Yeah. You've been a fabulous guest, Mike, and I'm so thankful that you've spent your very precious time with us today and this audience. Definitely look up Promenade Speakers Bureau. reach out to Mike. He is a fabulous guest, and we will hopefully be hearing from you again, Mike, at some point in the future.
Okay, great. It was fun to chat and to hear your perspective on things as well. We're often on our own doing what we do here, and it's nice to hear how other people are running their businesses too.
Yeah, I hope to see you still at Booking Managers Connect. I think that's just going to be a lot of fun. And for our listening audience, ciao, ciao for now.
Thank you for listening to the Speak Pact podcast. To become a recommended speaker of Antoniette's WPC speaker agency, or you are a host or planner looking for a dynamic expert in optimized performance, Antoniette would like to personally meet with you. Secure a time with her at speakerbooker.com. Again, that is speakerbooker.com. It all begins with a vision, a voice, and a pact to impact. Join the Speak Pact movement by joining our new private Facebook group at the link in our show notes. Find us on nearly every social media platform at One Antoniette. That's number 1, ANTONIETTE, or simply hashtag SpeakPact.